Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining us live on this lovely Monday evening. It is September 20th. This is the Voice of Reason podcast. My name is Sean Phillips, and as always, I am joined alongside my co-host, Mr. Andy Van Beber. How are you doing today, my friend?
I am worn out, but I'm good. I'm putting in my
I
hours
feel that.
for the for I'm putting in my hours for my driving. So we put in 8 hours today, and that was so not fun.
I
But
believe it. Now, are you driving with students on board? Do you have
no,
like a
no,
normal
this
bus
is
route
no.
that you're
We're
doing
with
right now?
we're going with an instructor right now, and so we're with this instructor. We're supposed to log so many hours. So this was the last. We got all my hours in today, and so then we'll go out. We'll go driving. Well, I actually have to go take the. So I'm taking the driving test. I've already taken the written test. I'm taking the driving test in St. Louis next Monday, and so
Okay.
yeah, my first time driving in the city, and it's going to be taking a driver's test. So go figure.
Right. Yeah. About to say they throw you right into downtown and they like
Well, yeah, it's
make you
actually
do it with a
so
big
it's
old
yeah,
bus.
it's actually in South. So we'll go down to South City, and then you do your
Hmm.
what's called the walk around, and then you check all the different parts of the bus. Then you do what's called your skills test, where you have to parallel. Just saying this scares me. Parallel parking a 50-foot bus, and then
Nice.
yeah, and then we do what's called you do this basically like backing in between buses and stuff like that, and yeah, I'll do fine. It's just the hardest part is actually doing. It's called the pre trip exam, where you have to look at all the different parts of the bus, make sure everything's working right, and so. But
Yeah.
it'll be fine. So
Yeah. I remember when I was actually air assault or like at air assault school, one of the hardest parts of our like testing, like the big thing that, was like most people were nervous about, but everyone pretty much did fine on it. We did this thing called sling loads, which is essentially, yeah, like you inspect over and over. You inspect the sling load of the, whatever it might be that normally would connect to a helicopter. So before it lifted up, you had to ensure that like it had the literally like the proper amount of chain links connected to it, made sure everything was tied down correctly, and it was such just like it's one of those things like you know it, but then you just get in your headspace about just being nervous and like missing over little things, and yeah,
I
that was like this
that
this this weekend. I had soldiers do
I saw your I,
drill. They had to do like the their general orders and stuff that they had memorized. Like I would hear them with it memorized correctly, but then the second that they had to like come up in front of me and like recite it, they just were lost in the sauce. So
Well, that's the
it
thing
was
too.
rather
I mean,
entertaining.
once you have to memorize that thing, and there you have to go around the bus, and you have to point out all these different parts and everything. And that's like you said, you get lost in it, and then you're like, okay, did I say what I was supposed to say? Did I miss
Hmm.
something? Because I mean, all it takes is them just to say, okay, take it
Yeah,
home, and I'm just like,
yeah,
oh, it's so bad, it's so bad. What about
yeah.
you? How was your weekend this weekend?
It was good. It was extremely busy. I was exhausted. So Saturday morning we did PT and it was a ton of running. I did a lot of running and I was pretty sore from that. We did, fitness stuff throughout the day, lots of exercising. And then that, drill lasted, a lot of training. Drill ran late. And then I drove an hour to Sedalia, worked a wrestling match there. Um, got beat up.
I saw your
Uh,
post. No, I didn't
yeah,
win.
yeah. Yeah, I got beat up and then stayed late to, tear the ring down or whatever. Got home around 12:30, went to bed at 1, and then
You're back up for
got up at 6 a.m. to,
wow,
get back at it. And
wow.
we played, for PT, we did a game of ultimate frisbee that lasted an hour and a half, and my Apple Watch told me that I had burned 1,400 calories during it. So it
Oh
was
man, that's a college tossback for me. Ultimate frisbee. That
yeah,
that
it was
we kind of did the old tackle ultimate frisbee. So I mean, it was
that's kind of how competitive it got towards the end of it, where people were just like, because the game was so close, it was super competitive. We just had like people trying to tackle each other. Like when the frisbee was up there, we're like, all right, we got to be careful because if you guys blow a shoulder out or tear an
Right.
ACL because we're playing
Right.
ultimate frisbee, we have a lot to answer for. So.
Right.
But it was good, and then I went home and watched football on the couch. So, how about you?
I would, like I said, this weekend was busy for us too. We did so Saturday we did the helped with the YMCA. We did Bryson and I did a DJ appearance and
I saw that. Yeah,
and
yeah,
that
yeah.
was 95 degrees. Who knows? In the middle of September, you're 95 degrees in the middle of September, and we roasted so bad.
I believe it. Yeah.
And then Friday night, I had a client over, one of our Clopton alumni who I hadn't seen probably since he graduated about 8 or 9 years ago. I think he was in your class.
Oh, nice.
And then we caught up on some stuff. And then yesterday, just sat around and watched the Chiefs get annihilated. Well, not annihilated, but just embarrassed. But, such is life. And
yeah.
But and then getting destroyed in fantasy football. So, what else can you say?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, if all goes well right now, I will get my first fantasy football win of the season, which is always nice because last week was not so nice to me. But there's hope this week. So well. I do, we can kind of discuss it here. Kind of a small elephant in our room that, I kind of want to touch on before we get into our stories. At least for the time being, the foreseeable future, it looks like for a little while, it's just going to be Andy and I running the show here for a little bit. Our co-host Travis will eventually be on here in the coming weeks to talk, and he will probably be on from time to time. And we've got another individual who you guys have seen here a lot that might be coming on to kind of help us out weekly. It's one of those things where when Travis comes back on, we'll definitely let him explain everything, but busy schedules just can get overwhelming,
right?
And we
were just to be upfront, we were totally supportive of him. It wasn't like, oh, you guys
absolutely
are dirty bastards or something. It was, he's like, hey, just need to kind of, and we were totally supportive
absolutely,
of him. Yeah. And he said, we just agreed with him, and we wanted just to be there for him. So we were glad that we could support him and all what's going on with him. Matt was going to be on, and then some last minute changes with him. He will hopefully be with us next week, but he gave me his opinions in like 3 words for every topic that we're talking about tonight. So, but he will be with us soon. So
that's funny. No, yeah, I'm excited to have him back whenever it comes time.
He's definitely an interesting creature, but I wanted to lead in with this. We've got a lot of different topics we can touch on, and if we go over on some of these, then we'll pick them up next week. But I wanted to,
of course,
start about with this this latest TiK ToK craze, and that's why we titled. By the way, episode 29 tonight, Sean. Episode 29.
Yeah, we are moving on up in the world.
But just wanted to start in with this newest TikTok craze. It's called Devious Lick. I'm sure you may have heard of this, but for those of you who don't know what Devious Lick is basically a craze on TikTok where you, I don't know if I want to say sabotage, vandalize, rob, steal stuff from your school, and then post it on social media. And Sean and I were discussing one of where this kid walks into the bathroom and somebody's taking a dump in the stall, and he says, "No, somebody stinks in here," and he rips the soap dispenser off the wall and throws it over the stall. There's been others. I've seen pictures of people stealing, of all things, stealing urinals. Stealing a urinal and and paper towel dispensers, televisions off the wall, stuff like this. And so it happened to me this week. It actually happened last Tuesday. We could go tomorrow. And it wasn't anything big. It was it was, if I had to replace it, would have been big. But there, you have your smart board and you have these computer markers that basically go with the smart board.
Hmm.
And somebody had taken the whole set and the eraser. And those things cost about $200 just for those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started, and I knew some folks were probably going to, somebody was going to roll, somebody was going to rat somebody out, somebody was going to do something.
Hmm.
And I found out who it was. And then I went and confronted that student and I said, hey, we don't do this. He said, oh, yeah, it was just a devious look and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, joke's over. The very next day happens again. And I go straight to the kid. I said, what's up? And so he's like, not me, not me. I swear it's not me. He said, you can check my bag, check my locker. And then I said, okay, where are they at? And devious look. And then I went in. I got upset. I came home that Wednesday night. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to tear people new buttholes tomorrow. So I went and I actually, I worked, so I talked with my principal about it, and I talked with one of my coworkers. And my coworker said, bring up the part of the school manual. He said, don't make it about you. He said, bring up the part of the school manual tomorrow where it talks about theft and how it can get you suspended and kicked off teams and everything else like that. And in my 25 years of teaching, I have never yelled. And I mean, you've heard some dandies when you were in my classroom, but I had never yelled. I yelled so loud that I made two girls in the class cry. And I mean, I went absolutely ballistic. And it, to me, basically the point I made with these kids, I read it out of the manual, and then I said, what level of ignorance do you need to have to be influenced by someone on social media to do an act of vandalism to your school for the sake of likes on social media? And it kind of goes, I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago, we were talking about that, what was it, that mockumentary about Facebook and how, was that with you? Or you and I were talking about that or something. It's called The Social Dilemma. I don't know if you've heard of this before. Maybe somebody else I was talking
I
to.
don't think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a mockumentary out there, and it's based on the true story, true accounts of people who used to work for Facebook and MySpace and all these, and it's called The Social Dilemma. And this thing goes into is how it is, like, it's dangerous for, I mean, the dangers that social media, the science behind it, that is doing to your brain, like getting the response from the likes or the follows or the whatever, is sending this dope, it's causing the dopamine.
Literal dopamine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they were talking about how dangerous this kind of stuff is, and how, so many different kids and even adults now, I mean, the whole thing with social media and how, and I guess I shouldn't be kicking too hard against the hand that feeds us here, but the fact that how social media is creating this false sense of accomplishment, of I've or I've made it, or I'm successful because I have X amount of likes, or I have, and they just and when you have a keyboard in front of you and you have no filter and you can just totally go at it, but yet you can't carry on a reasonable conversation with the person, hence the purpose of this podcast. To me, we've lost the idea, and I've seen this over, I'm 47, I've seen this, that we've lost the ability of how to communicate face to face. We've lost the ability to say, okay, we're going to sit down and have a conversation. It can be about, it's. I saw this talk one time, saying one time that said, we can't talk about religion and politics and human sexuality because we're kept from talking about it because we argue about it too much on social media.
Right. Yeah.
And and it's just stuff like this when kids see it, and it's sad to say that the greatest influencer of this new generation is social media. It's not a, it's not a coach, it's not a teacher, it's not a parent. And I'm not saying this for everybody, but for a lot, a large percentage of kids, you know, it's the phone, it's the social media, and we're creating a, I call it a generation of phone zombies because people don't know how to, you know, operate outside of this parameter of your little cell phone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're not, wrong. And I think we all fall guilty a couple, every day with some of those, different things. Like I might find myself kind of like scrolling through more than I necessarily need to sometimes. But yeah, I mean, it's wild, and it's also like we kind of come to just like technology and internet and kind of social media in general becomes like almost an outlet for how we receive our information, which is dangerous in itself
Yes.
because look at um based off like your kind of like surroundings generally, like kind of that's how people get their thoughts and opinions that way. But like if you're on Twitter or if you're on Facebook, and then all you see is just constant you know
Barrage, right?
um just a barrage of opinions about certain things, and then those opinions come from maybe a left or a right wing skewed, news network that is just posting clickbaity articles just to grab your attention. And like it's advertising literally is kind of, like marketing runs how our opinions go. Newspapers are hiring more advertisers and marketers, not so much to sell a product, but to sell a story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even if that story isn't always 100% true, like I would say now more than ever, we constantly see shoot first, ask questions later when it
Exactly.
comes to
Exactly.
like news, when it comes to reporting on something. It's literally
Who
just the worst,
and
worst thing first, and then we'll deal with repercussions later.
right, and who can get the who can get the story out first? It's not necessarily about the truth as it is
Hmm.
selling the story. I remember it's been a few years ago, but Denzel Washington was interviewed on the red carpet for some premiere or something like that, and he called out the media and you know, he said it's not about the news isn't about truth anymore. You guys are like having a race to see who can get the most numbers and who can, like you said, who can get the most clicks, who can get the most anything.
Hmm.
And what's bad about that is people base their misinformation upon that, and then they, like you said, they run with it.
Hmm.
And
There was a I don't remember the name of the news outlet because it's not like a major news outlet. It's kind of like an internet news outlet. That's definitely more of like a super right wing. I would almost call it more of like a Trump news kind of program where this news anchor was interviewing this like veteran, U.S. veteran, like a former Navy SEAL or something, that was like talking about the withdrawal of Afghanistan, and the news anchor was like, "Yeah, Biden butchered this, and someone like Trump wouldn't have done this. He was planning it out." And then and the vet didn't even like bash Trump. He's like, "Yeah, but in all due respect, I just want to let you know, like this started from this, like a couple years, like during Trump's presidency, he was starting to withdraw, and then the news anchor just started cutting him off, like, no, I'm
yep,
gonna stop you there. And
right.
then he literally was like, cut his feed, and they and then he started yelling like, I don't care if you're a veteran, you will not slander President Trump on my newscast. And it was like, if this is not a clear sign of what fascism looks like,
Right.
I don't know what is.
And I just saw an advertise. I haven't checked this out yet. I just and I heard it on an ad today, and I saw. I think it was like a commercial even on YouTube. But
Hmm.
it's labeling it's called Smart News, and I haven't checked it out, so I don't know anything about it yet. But they're claiming to be just the facts news, like the old school, just the facts news, no commentary, no. It's news you need to know,
Hmm.
straightforward, and it's called Smart News. So I'm going to check that out this week,
Hmm.
and I'm kind of curious. I mean, I've been And I was talking about this with my principal the other day. We were just talking about, when you can, go to Fox, go to CNN, compare the two and see how they're, and go to their social, I actually subscribe to both their social media feeds just so I can get
Huh.
on Twitter when something comes up.
Yeah.
I mean, they're right there together. When it's a news story, they're usually, I mean, like
Hmm.
right on top of each other.
Mm.
And it's interesting to see how each side tells their story. So, but
Yeah.
something interesting about that. But
That's cool.
yeah, the other thing I was wanting to bring about before, we wanted to talk a little bit about Gabby. I'm gonna mess it up, Sean. Gabby Petito, Petito.
Yep.
Okay, so this young man, I want to make sure I get his name right because he's playing his 15 minutes of fame, and I'm gonna bring this graphic up. Some of you have seen, and again, I'll apologize for people who are listening and not watching, but on your screen right now is what you see is the Nirvana Nevermind. Nevermind was the album that probably revolutionized the grunge music scene 30 years ago. It's hard for me to believe that I was a senior in high school going into my freshman year of college when this album came out. But never mind. And you see on there on the top picture there is the actual was the album cover. The gentleman, and I always Eldon, what was Spencer Eldon, and this
Hmm.
young man, he is 30 years old, and on the 5 year, 10 year, 20 year, and then the 30 year, he recreated, and what you're seeing here on the screen is the recreation of this album cover, and little Spencer there when he was, this was taken at a pool party. This picture was, and the guy who took the picture sold it to, I believe it was Geffen Records, and the guy got $400 for the photo.
I would
And
say his parents got paid for
yeah,
it. Like his parents
yeah,
agreed to have him take this
right,
photo. Yeah.
right. And so now, 30 years later, Mr. Eldon is suing Kurt Cobain's estate and Nirvana. It's Dave Grohl, Kurt Nevlicek, and I'm not Kurt. I don't know, but it's Kurt Cobain, Dave Grohl. I can't ever pronounce that other guy's the bassist name, but and again, he's suing for $150,000 in damages because he claims that it is child pornography. Now, obviously, the boy's little tiny penis there is, but I was reading I was going through a number of commentaries today about how you can look back throughout the ages, and I'm not an art historian. I teach history, but I'm not an art historian. But I mean, we talk about different eras in art, and and to say that this is child pornography, I mean, this guy, and by the way, this guy actually has the word. I don't bring it back up here real quick, but if you can't really see it here, but if you look on the bottom photo here, it's kind of hard to see, but he actually has the word "never mind" tattooed across his chest. And
He
this guy,
also
he commemorated it.
he's recreated this photo multiple times. Like on it started
Yeah,
to get like once a year or something on his
right,
birthday or something.
right,
He was
right,
recreating this photo. Yeah.
right. And to me, you know, the guy, and so I was reading through BBC's. This was from back when he filed the suit. Um, but he was basically saying he's an artist now. He said he told this news outlet that he came to the realization after trying to get in touch with the band and the photographer who took the photo. He's like, just a few months ago when I was reaching out to Nirvana to see if they wanted to be a part of my art show, I was getting referred to their managers and their lawyers. He said, why am I still on the cover if I'm not that big of a deal? Okay, that right there says it all.
Hmm.
I don't think I'm taking him out of context when I mean, That's just the paragraph there. And it says this guy is reportedly seeking damages, attorney fees, and an injunction to prohibit all parties from continuing to engage in the unlawful acts and practices described herein. I hate to tell that guy, but that album cover is probably one of the most famous, next to the Beatles' White Album, is probably one of the most famous albums covers in the history of music. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was that album for me. I mean, changed how I viewed music. I mean, it opened me up a lot more to music. I wasn't really a grunge guy or a heavy,
Mm-hmm.
but Nirvana. I mean, they basically added more rock to punk, and that's where you get the grunge scene. But and then this guy is, I think this guy is just upset that he's lost his 15 minutes of fame. Nobody cares
Well,
about
wasn't
him.
like the wasn't like the point of the album cover something along the lines of like chasing a buck?
Yeah,
Like that's like the,
and how
and then I'm
ironic
like here he is
how
chasing a
ironic,
buck.
right?
Yeah.
How ironic is that? And
Yeah.
I see things like that, and I was talking to some folks the other day about how litigious we are getting in this society anymore. If I can find a way to get a buck off of somebody, I'm going to do it. If I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to, if I can sue a police, I mean that's why everybody's got their phones out, and whenever a cop gets them pulled over, I'm gonna get some money out of this police department, or I'm gonna,
Mm-hmm.
and but I saw that story and I thought it was quite. It was just, to me, I didn't want to give this guy any more time because I do want to spend a lot of time. We want to spend time talking about Gabby, but I saw that this week. Again, that his case is actually moving forward, and that there is a courtroom somewhere in Southern California that is actually listening to this case. And a number of lawyers who I read this guy, he benefited from it. He celebrated it. He had it tattooed on his. And now
Mm-hmm.
it's when Nirvana doesn't play his way and be a part of his art show. Oh, now I'm going to sue you for child pornography and exploitation. It's
Yep.
totally
I
ignorant.
legitimately think probably what's going to happen is, I mean, Nirvana obviously could probably afford a pretty strong defense
Oh yeah,
team, you know. So worst case scenario, I think that they might agree to like a plea deal where they dismiss child pornography charges and give the dude $50,000 in cash and tell him to leave him alone and not
um,
mention it ever again.
and to me, that's
If that. And I
if
honestly
that.
think, yeah, I truthfully think that probably the judge is going to look at this and be like, you're joking, right?
Well, and what really surprised me is Dave Grohl is still a big voice in rock and roll. I mean, Foo Fighters, heck,
Yeah.
are
Yeah,
they're going on
they're
20 plus.
giant.
Yeah, by the way, I love Dave Grohl. I love the Foo Fighters are in my top 5
Hmm.
favorite bands.
Hmm.
I love watching him perform. I love watching him be interviewed because he's like, this is chasing a little bit of a rabbit, but every time they try to bait him on, well, what do you feel about politics, or what do you feel about this he said, hey man, I'm here to talk about music. He said, I don't talk about
Hmm.
politics. He said, that's my, and I applaud that guy. And so to have a guy like that, whenever he would say that. I mean, like you said, I think he's got some good high powered attorneys that they'll
Yeah,
probably put this to bed pretty quick.
fairly quick. Yeah, no, I agree. I I agree.
So why don't you go ahead and lead in about this Gabby Petito story?
Yeah, so as some of you guys might have seen in the news in the last couple of truthfully, it was kind of a story that came out of nowhere, and that is something I kind of want to be the first things that I address. And I'd spoken with Andy about this earlier. Is I saw a lot of people that were kind of going in this week is kind of like on Twitter and other people like talking about how this is a missing persons case and that the only reason why has made news is because it's like a pretty blonde, blue-eyed white girl is the only reason why it received national attention. That there's tons of other individuals who aren't pretty blonde white girls that don't get any news attention. And um, first off, like, shame on you. This is a
Right.
missing individual that they thought they might have a chance to potentially find alive. Um, which, if the one thing you're worried about is, other people not getting attention, like we want to find everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing that gets me is this was not a case that was like picked up by news outlets the day she was reported missing at all. That's one thing that people just they create that narrative, or like they like to create that narrative. That's not the case. Um, this case took off because of TikTok. It was literally there's a whole like in like Reddit, there's subreddits of different threads and niches that you can find in Reddit. TikTok's I've heard is like the same way. I don't have TikTok, but what I do know is that there is a pretty big like true crime section of TikTok of like these are TikTokers that are obsessed with true crime. And this was a particular case that had popped up that they found themselves interested in. And friends of hers that had kind of reported her missing were also on there. And these people kind of took the reins with it. And it blew up because it was such a weird thing. And then it made its way into the national news because it was so big on TikTok. So,
And the thing also is that, and to give a little bit of back with her, Gabby actually, I guess she has a pretty large Instagram following before her death anyway. But she was um, vlogging her and her fiance's basically trip across America, right?
yeah. And the vlog was like new. This trip was like their first trip and the start of this travel vlog. And there's a very interesting detail that I had actually read that I'll get to later about that vlog that might actually have more proof that like just give a better timeline of when she actually went missing. Um, but yeah, so it originally, yeah, like I said, it was they were documenting a cross country road trip on their YouTube channel. Um, And so to kind of do a rough breakdown of timelines, in June of this year, they had actually left. So her fiance or boyfriend's name is an individual named Brian Laundrie, is his name. His family, which we'll talk about also here in a little bit, live in a town called Northport, Florida. They had been living there. She had been living with him for about a year. From my understanding, her family lives in New York. Um, and they were traveling west in her travel van. So essentially, these two had known each other. I guess his family had lived in New York, and that's where they had grown up together and started dating out there. His family moved to Florida. She ended up going out there, and it sounds from an article that I had read. Again, I don't know how true this part is, but I had read that she had sold a lot of her belongings and bought this Sprinter van. To turn into a travel van, and that was a project they had worked on together. Beginning of July, they traveled through Colorado into Utah as they were kind of headed out towards Arizona and Wyoming, towards a bunch of the national parks out west. Um,
And
now,
I just put up on screen too for those of you who are watching.
okay, cool.
And Sean's actually coming, but you can see a picture of the van that they used. And but go ahead, Sean. I'll just leave this up for a little bit as you walk through
No,
this.
no, yeah. So around August 12th, which is a really important date, and this is another one of those tough situations. Police in Utah, Moab, Utah, had responded to an incident that involves a domestic dispute between Petito and Laundrie. The Grand County, Utah Sheriff's Office released a 911 recording in which a caller claimed he witnessed Brian Laundrie allegedly slapping Gabby Petito and chasing her up and down a sidewalk in Moab, hitting her. So, for the record, this was not either one of them had called authorities. This was a witness had called authorities and said that they had seen something. So, in the recording, like I said, it claimed that he had seen an apparent domestic dispute unfold on Main Street in Moab while they were driving. So police ended up pulling on their vehicle as it was kind of swerving, and it actually went over a curb. So they pulled them over and spoke with both of the two separately. Now, this is where I'm seeing a lot of dispute on the internet of how these police handled this situation. Many people are saying, are pretty angry that, because it's very clear, there's a body cam video released of it where Petito is very upset.
I was going to say it's disturbing. It's
And yeah, it is, and definitely this Brian guy. It almost kind of like reminds me of like Ted Bundy in a way, of where he's like,
Mm-hmm.
trying to play so cool of like, haha, I can get along with the cops. Like, come on, man, she's great. Just kind of this. It's unsettling. Like he's laughing and kind of joking around with one of the cops, talking about like, dude, literally kind of like the, how it is, man. These women are crazy. Just like talking about her who's upset. um, she gets placed in the back of a squad car, which again, maybe not the place to put her, even though they were putting her there to like calm down so they could get her side of the story. When you put someone in the back of a squad car like that, if this person doesn't know what might happen, it's not the best look on the department of where you should be putting someone that might be a potential domestic abuse victim.
Right.
Because by putting them in the squad car like that in the back, you're kind of giving that like that impression that they might be at fault here, which is the last thing that you want. Um, where I am a little bit mixed up at when it comes to this situation is because I've seen several different reports, so I don't know 100% of what's true. I have read in some articles that after the situation, the police had actually gotten a hotel that laundry. So I've like I said, I don't know the specifics on this part because I've read several different articles from several semi-reputable news sources where one of them has said police just let them go. They left together. I've read other ones where it has said that Brian Laundrie stayed at a hotel where Gabby Petito um, stayed in the Sprinter van. They separated them over the night. And then I've read another one where it was Petito that stayed in the hotel and Laundrie that stayed in the Sprinter van. So that I've literally heard conflicting stories from like literally MSN, CNN, MSNBC. Like I've read different articles regarding that situation, so I can't say one thing or the other. What we do know is that they were called to a domestic. Um, it's hard, like you know, could have things been handled differently? Probably, given the circumstances. What we know about domestics, why domestics can be so difficult, is in this instance in there, she states he did not hit me. So the police weren't going to move forward with any kind of charges. What people have to understand is like when it comes to these kind of things, like this is to put it in perspective. When we look at domestic abuse cases across the United States, like if you might know someone or you might have heard about someone who like might be with an individual where it's continuous or it's like, why is she still with him? This happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's people don't understand if they're not in those situations how difficult it might be. The mental puzzle that it can bring upon someone to be in that kind of situation is very dangerous. And then here's the thing with it is, the SOP of the department might dictate if she says like, hey, he didn't hit me, I'm not pressing charges. There's nothing that the police could do, especially if the police themselves haven't seen anything, because they're taking a potential eyewitness's word over the word of the individual who it's, potentially if he says, yeah, she got hit, but she claims she didn't, it makes it kind of difficult. You don't have anything that you can move forward with. So that's a difficult thing about domestics and why some of them can, repeatedly happen over and over again. If the victim chooses not to press charges, or if the police don't have proof and the victim of the abuse is denying any abuse claims, you can't just arrest someone off of, that he might be hitting her. We don't know. That's why these kind of things happen. And I want people to understand that's why they're so difficult. And police just can't arrest him or book him on the
Right.
spot
Right.
if she's saying it didn't happen. So
Do you
that's where it's
with
difficult.
and with this? I'll just call it an epidemic of. I have no stomach for any kind of domestic abuse or parental abuse in my line of work. I've seen a lot. I've had students who, and it's been a good long time ago since I've had students who've come to school with bruises on their arm. I mean, you could
Mm-hmm.
just tell it was like, a hand, and then on, up here, the ones that
Mm-hmm.
get me are where I see bruises on both,
Hmm.
both upper arms, and it's kids do not kids and women alike. I think they do not want to cause a ripple, and I think with domestic abuse, and this goes for male or female, and maybe it's just because they do not feel, well, I can't survive outside of this situation, right? It's kind of like
And that's
a
something that
learned
the abuser
helplessness.
can tell them.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and look at like when it comes to like child abuse too. Like you have to, a big thing like I hear a lot is like the power of like saying sorry. Of like if someone was to hit a child or do something to a child, and then them say, sorry. Like if that's all the child knows, like this parent, this is the person who protects me. This is the person who looks over for me. It becomes, it can become normal to that child that like this is just how it goes.
Well, let me
which is
bring
which is a huge, yeah, yeah.
one of our viewers, who I know for a fact works with the Pike County Sheriff's Department, just commented, and she said, for most states, law enforcement can just take a report and turn it over to the prosecuting attorney's office,
Hmm.
and the state can choose to press charges, regardless on if the victim is cooperating or not. A lot of
Mm.
domestic abuse victims, though, do not make reports on the assailant.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
again,
and especially in out of state in Utah, camper, like how long is it going to be before that report gets sent up?
well, and I mean, to me, how this could, and I'm sure that we're going to get more as more stuff
Hmm.
comes. I was, while you were talking there, I was just looking at and I just had something actually just come up over my phone about how the FBI did another raid on the laundry house this morning, and
Correct. Yep.
they seized more evidence. And obviously, they can't disclose anything about that now. But I think that what they're doing is they're going to build this case that you know grows and grows. But and it is a shame that it takes something like this for it to come. But where this one case is made public, hundreds of thousands are not made
Hmm.
public. And to me, that is
Correct.
that is a very, like you said, that is so sad because my aunt, and she was married to this man, my uncle, for 25 years. Now this was back in the 70s and the 60s, 70s and the 80s. She's married to this man, and I mean, we would get reports about how he would, well, he slammed my cousin's head inside of a dishwasher, and whenever they were, and what was bad about this guy was a jailer at the local county sheriff's
Hmm.
department, and he was a
Hmm.
deputy. And so when you call down there, oh, that's just such and such. He won't do. He and again, 70s and 80s, it was just you definitely did not air your family
Your
business out
baggage.
there,
Yeah.
and you didn't put
Yeah.
out your, yeah, right, you didn't put your baggage out there. And there came a time then when my aunt just said, we're leaving, we're
Hmm.
leaving. She had two teenage boys, and her daughter's the same age as I am. And it took 25 years
Yeah. Yeah.
of that to happen. Now, and I don't want to just say it's just on, I mean, it goes the other way too. And I know men who take not a physical beating but verbal and mental beating. And where do you, I just want to go into this before we get to talk more about Gabby. I want, where, you and I are both in healthy relationships, and we have, we learn, where does the breakdown occur? Do you think that it gets to the point of where is it learn, where this violence occurs? Is it something that's learned, or is it just lack of self control, or how would you see that?
So as far as like what
What?
causes
Yeah,
someone to
yeah, yeah,
do,
yeah.
man, I don't think you can. I'll be honest. I don't think there's ever a real reason. And that's just based off of like could it be, let's talk about like when we talk about bullies, right? Like people that do bullying.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, sometimes, you hear stories about how at home the bullies are abused, neglected, or something at home, and that turns to anger that they take out on someone else.
Right.
I don't know. That's not every case. Look at some of like the most this is an extreme example, but this who we have real data on is look at like some of the most horrendous serial killers of all time. If you go back and look at like their upbringing and their childhood, most, not all, but most of them had horrendous childhoods where there was some sort of sexual abuse, some sort of physical abuse, um, constant, and it was never ending, and it kind of led to what would eventually snap and go off and become that. And that's not every case, because not every case is that extreme, and not everyone that's ever had something bad happen to them becomes that kind of person.
Right.
I think there's so much just based off like personality traits. Like it literally could be anything, because people are so unique, right? But like look at individuals that might have like addictive personalities, right? Like it might not be addicted, they might not be addicted to alcohol or drugs, but they might be addicted to their phone, they might be addicted to food, they might be addicted to anything. It literally could be, but if they just have that addictive personality. So take it with someone that might tend to just have a little bit more of a more aggressive tendencies,
Mm-hmm.
and then they don't have an outlet, and then all of a sudden, like look at what's that old saying about like the Irish, like um how what kills most Irish is bottled up emotion of just
Right. Right.
being
Just keeping it
quiet
all in. Right.
for
Right.
keeping it all in until it just kills you. And then in some cases it's when you bottle it in, you take it out on those closest to you. They literally, and that's a lot of times why it's usually I would say from men to women, it's more, and like men to children, it's more physical abuse, because they feel like that's the person, like I can't hit my boss, but you
I can
you are
take it out
smaller than
on.
me, I can
Right.
hit you.
Well, don't you
And then
think
like
with this thing and you mentioned that bottled up thing, and you go
mhm,
back through the Instagram story, and this vlog had, I'd lost track of how. I mean, it had quite a few entries in it. Okay,
mhm,
so somebody there, obviously there wasn't a lot that we weren't seeing through this. I mean, police are studying, this vlog,
mhm,
and then they look at the body cam footage. There's already forensic scientists. I read an article this afternoon that here's something, and again, we give it up for the police because they do their job in strenuous situations.
mhm.
But this one forensic scientist had mentioned in an article today the key, some of the key factors that they should have been seeing with this case, and with when they had them both there and they had them separated, you know. But again, police aren't trained, social workers.
No, and see, here's the thing about that. This is where, like, when people were like, I saw these people trying to make this argument of the whole defund the police, of how like, okay, we'll
Right.
send a
Yep.
social worker into that
And
situation.
I'm not
Here's the
going.
thing,
I'm not
okay,
going in. I'm not going to. I don't agree with that at all.
right, that the there's levels to it, because if we just sent a social worker to that situation, not police officers, just a social worker, who's to say that the fucking Brian Laundrie doesn't beat the shit out of the social
Right.
worker,
Right.
right, and then
Right.
dips out like go piss off, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do.
Right.
Now this could be one of those things where it's like, okay, well, how long does it take to become a social worker? How long do you have to train to do
Oh,
that? Can
jeez.
we train our police officers that length to do it?
Well,
Maybe.
and there.
But then what if, what if we had, on calls for domestics, what if we take, what if social workers go? Well, then it's like, okay, well,
And
then
that
you have to outweigh the dangers of, well, what if the person inside there just starts shooting, and then we have a
exactly.
bunch of dead social workers?
And
So
that
it's like
and
we can't make everybody happy. It's not always going to be perfect.
and the law enforcement. I mean, think about how fluid that situation was. You get the and we've heard this before. They get the 911 call, so they're responding, And when I
Mm-hmm.
still remember back when we had the police officers on back way back, whatever it was, episode 9 or 10, and
Mm-hmm.
they're telling you, we're not getting a lot over the radio. And I think we've
Right.
talked about this before. They're not getting details over the radio of what's going on, what the situation. They're pulling up, and they're not pulling up to say, "Okay, guys, let's sit around and let's talk about this
Mm-hmm.
problem." No, what's their number one job? Their number one job is to come in. What's their slogan? Serve and protect. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so they're out there to protect Brian Laundrie from, from Gabby, and Gabby from Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have. I mean, that's not their number one priority, is to figure out why it's happening. They just got to
Mm-hmm.
they've got to de-escalate the situation is the number one thing. And I'm glad you brought up the whole defund the police things, because it isn't the police's job to, but like you said, if you send a social worker in there, I mean, unless they're packing, they could get,
Mm-hmm.
they could get pistol whipped, they could get shot, they could get, who knows what.
Yeah.
And so you can't, and you brought that point, you can't keep everybody happy. What's a police officer to do? So when he arrives, he's going to
Mm-hmm.
evaluate this, and it's, what is it? Probably less than 20 seconds that they have to, when they arrive on scene, evaluate the situation. If it's abuse that's in action, they've got to get in the middle of it, break it up, separate
Mm-hmm.
the two, put one in one car and one over on the curb, and then, like you say, Johnny Smooth Talk starts his whole thing. Oh man, she's just crazy, and I do remember. Did you hear? Maybe I misheard this, but didn't they say on one of the body cams she started mentioning her OCD or something like that, and
Yeah.
how it drove him nuts? And I'm just like, man, if it has bottled up and got to this point to where your OCD is called, there's issues, but the cops aren't there to. They're not there to figure it out. They're going to say, how can we protect Party A from Party B? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want. We have another comment here. It says, from what I understand after watching the cop cam, there were eyewitnesses who said Gabby was the aggressor in Moab. The cop
So
mentioned
there
that.
was, yeah, there was like she had said that she had slapped him like in the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, I'm literally like the report that again, this is where that's where what makes this case so difficult is there's a ton of conflicting reports.
Mm-hmm.
You read one news article, it might say one thing, and two others will say another thing. So that I want to make very clear because I've read a lot of different ones about this case to try to get the most transparent. That's why I've said before, like I'm unclear of certain things
Right.
because they're all different. There are so many different things, and I don't think actual police reports have been like released yet, at least not
Right.
that I've dug up. So,
And they also said
um,
the cop mentioned that's why it is hard, because all three stories
mhm.
were jiving together. So technically, she was the one who was supposed to go to jail, not saying that the aggression wasn't self defense though. And so that's the other thing we don't know.
Right.
Is it self
Yeah,
defense?
because
Was it?
literally, like what I'm reading right here on MSN, like it says, in the recording of the 911 call, the caller, whose name is not released, claimed he saw the apparent domestic abuse unfold on Main Street in Moab between a young couple driving a white van with a Florida license plate. We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl, the caller told the 911 dispatcher.
Yeah.
And then when we stopped, they ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and drove off. So like
And
there was another thing that I had read where he would literally lock her out of the vehicle and tell her like,
yeah.
why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Well, she would cry. So very clearly there's a lot of mental head games that are going on, and that kind of stuff had to have been going on
It,
for years, months. This is not something that probably just started over this, because there was another article again that I read that talked about how one of her friends, Gabby Petito's friends, had said that this isn't new. Like Brian was controlling, very jealous, like wouldn't let her go out and do this or that or the other without him. That kind of guy. Um, and so I wanna shuffle forward. So August 24th, um, according to MSN, Petito was spotted checking out of a hotel in Salt Lake City, Utah, police said. This is the last time Petito was reportedly seen alive. So this is give or take about 2 weeks,
mm-hmm.
just shy of 2 weeks, about 10 days after the alleged incident. So August 25th, and this date is pretty crucial. Petito's mother, Nicole Schmidt, said that she had last spoke to her daughter on August 25th when Petito told her that her and Brian were leaving to Utah and headed to Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks in Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
Sounded excited to go on her trip. So her family claims they regularly had contact, multiple calls, multiple texts throughout the day, each and every single day. Okay. Now, since August 25th, Schmidt claims that she had only received 2 texts from Petito's phone on August 25th. One of them was literally the first one that came, says no service in Yellowstone. I don't know what the other one said, but the first one I read was like no service in Yellowstone. But there were no photos or details about the trip. They were very short and abrupt. So her family does not believe they came from Gabby.
Right.
They believe that they came from Brian. And also, Gabby had, if you go back on her Instagram, had constantly geotagged all of her locations consistently. The last photograph that she uploaded was on August 25th, and it's, for whatever reason, the only one where the location isn't tagged. One of those kind of probably missed without recognizing it things by Brian, thinking that Brian was the one that uploaded this.
Mm-hmm. And just
so it's believed that between
Grand Teton is where they did find her body.
Her body, correct. Yeah. Yes. So August 27th to August 30th is where the FBI and state authorities believe Petito disappeared. They don't know what the exact date was. However, what's very interesting, and part of the reason why they found her body, there was a couple, another travel vlog couple that was literally driving past a normal camping park spot to find a separate place to find a spot for their camper, where they were driving and like literally just cruising through, and there was a white van off to the left of the road, just randomly in this field. No car on, but they know it was their van because the vehicle literally matches, but also her shoes and hat were seen in the vehicle while they're driving by. Well, get this. So this couple shared this video with police because they were just editing it. They knew that, they had kind of heard the story because they were in the area. But then they were literally editing their own YouTube vlog when they were like, holy crap, I think that's the van. Like, that's the van that we keep seeing in the news. So they shared that with police. And then after police had it, they kind of had an idea where she was. And they found her not far from that location. So odds are that is probably where Brian had either murdered her in that area or at least just went to dispose of her body. Now I want to go down. So here's where things get kind of interesting. So a potential witness, an individual named Miranda Baker, claimed in a TikTok post. So this is kind of where things started to get big on TikTok. That she and her boyfriend gave Brian a ride in Grand Teton National Park on August 29th. Police in Florida confirmed that they have spoken to her, but the FBI have not. So Baker claimed that Laundrie told her and her boyfriend that he had been camping alone for a few days while Petito was working on their social media page from their van. Baker said that when she told Laundrie that they were headed to Jackson, he got out, was thankful, but was in a hurry to where he literally was gone within a couple of seconds, got out the van, left. So that was on August 29th. September 1st, Laundrie returns to Florida in Petito's van without Gabby Petito. So that, from where they were at in Wyoming to Florida, the 2-day trip, meaning he left that day and drove straight through.
Probably that's a power drive too.
So the issue is there's been no contact. He returned September 1st, 19 days ago. Gabby Petito was not reported missing by her family until September 11th. So when these people are talking about all these missing, why is this brought up right away? It was 2 weeks since her death that she was even reported missing. So a family who lives in Long Island said that they had reached out because they hadn't heard from her for 2 weeks, which was very not like their daughter. Mm-hmm. So September 14th, Laundrie and his family released a statement that he will remain silent under advice of counsel. His attorney was very short, just said, "We hope they find Gabby Petito and bring her back." That literally very short, sweet, to the point. Well, here's an issue, and I don't want to get my days mixed up, but I want to say that it was at that time, or it was the 16th, that the Norfolk police had said that they had spoken with Brian or talked to Brian, where that was allegedly not the case. He had already been gone because they said that they had spoken with him, but then they reported that he had been missing since Tuesday, 2 days prior to when they said that they had spoken with him, which is a bit fishy coming out of this police department. Right. It's almost one of those like, oh, we took the parents' word for it that he was there. So it wasn't until September 17th, 3 days ago, Laundrie was reported missing by his family. And according to both the attorney for the family and Northport Police Department, Laundrie's family said they hadn't seen him in days, which, mind you, it was September 16th that they had allegedly spoken to, the Norfolk police said they had spoken to him. So clearly timeline's not crossing with the police department, which again,
you're right,
kind of sketch.
Now
the
mystery remains. Now, where is he?
Yes, that is where the mystery is. So moving forward, kind of past a lot of this stuff, is her body, I want to say, was found yesterday. Again, and it wasn't like it allegedly hasn't been confirmed as far as like a DNA match, but from what I was reading, it sounds like they're 100% sure it's her. The tattoos are matching, right, and stuff like that. Yeah. So cause of death has not, at least they say, has not been determined. I just think it hasn't been announced yet.
Well, and the autopsy report is supposed to be released tomorrow, what I just read.
Yeah, so it should be coming out soon. So they are apparently looking for Brian in about a 25,000 acre nature preserve. We had spoken kind of before this. I think there's a couple different things on the table. Clearly, his family gave him time. If he returned the 1st and nothing had been said up until the 16th, he had 2 weeks of preparation to get himself prepared to leave. Whether or not he fled the country, whether or not he has gone to another part of the country, there is a good chance he went off into the Everglades and took his own life. But now the FBI has officially raided Brian Laundrie's parents' home. They have taken his parents out of the home.
Where is this? I mean, geographically, where is this located at in Florida?
So, if I'm not mistaken, this part of Florida is like kind of in the middle part. Like it's not, it looks towards the ocean.
Yeah, on the map
it's in the Everglades.
Yeah, it looks like it's a little bit north of Orlando, possibly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Definitely in that swamp people.
Well, and I mean, if he committed suicide or something, I mean, the Everglades, they're not gonna find anything out there. I mean that. But again, we want to, and I think this is a good point for us to, before we close up tonight. If you know of somebody, or if you are somebody who is a victim of domestic abuse, emotional abuse. One of our viewers said mental and emotional abuse, along with isolating Gabby from everyone, the perfect combo for an abuser. Just know that you do not have to stay in that situation. There are people who can help. I know, especially in this area, there is a group out of Quincy that's called Quinata, and it is for abused women. I actually have personal contacts with that group within my church, and that's a non-for-profit organization out of Quincy that works with abused, not only women, but abused teenagers, and so that is an option. Please, get the help that you need, and do not subject yourself to this one more day.
Yeah, and again, you know, understandably, it can be extremely scary. It's naturally a big step when you don't know what the next step is. If you've kind of been in that situation for a long time, it can seem confusing and unnerving and scary to try to find a way, what's next after that person. But we are just two humans on this planet. But I do know that um, if there are any listeners that are dealing with anything like that, please, you can always reach out to us to help get you in a place where we can have someone get in contact with you, or that
Mm-hmm.
you can contact, that can get you out of that situation correctly and safely. Um, because yeah, the last thing we want to see are more cases like this.
Right.
It truly is heartbreaking. And when you just want answers, you want answers for the family, you want answers for friends, you want closure as to why and what. And unfortunately, it seems like we might not get those answers due to, you know, Mr. Laundrie's cowardice, um, of just being a scumbag
Right.
human, and trying to take
Right.
the easy way out instead of
Facing the music.
the yeah, exactly. So on a lighter note, um, I am super excited to be back next week. Well, we'll get some good stuff, and
And
hopefully we'll have some follow up with some hopefully potential good news, or just at least more information on some of this stuff.
mm-hmm.
If any of you guys have any ideas, we did have one of our listeners give us a list of things that she might like us to hear. So we're actually probably going to dig in, do some research during the week, talk about some of those subjects. I definitely got a good one that we will talk about next week, where there is video and photo footage of Texas Border Patrol agents on horseback whipping Haitian
Yeah.
immigrants, which is going to cause quite the stir once it really kind of
Yep.
hits the waves. So,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Andy, is there anything you'd like to add before we
No,
we check
man
out here
alive.
tonight?
What a great audience we had tonight. And
Yeah.
man, we had a ton of comments again tonight. And by the way, before we get off the air, one of our loyal listeners, Colby Coleman, did want to know who you wrestled and got beat by.
I wrestled the old superstar
Superstar
Steve,
Steve.
one of Harley Race's finest, and one of his first trainees that ever went through World League Wrestling. Old Steve, yeah.
Well, there you go.
Put the boots to asses on me. But,
Yo.
Well, for our listeners, again, please, 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 if you could, we'd love if you would give us a like. Please give us a share. Please talk with your friends, family, anyone that might like to give us a listen. If there's anything specific you guys do want to hear us talk about, you could shoot either Andy or I a message on Facebook. You can message the page itself. Let us know what you'd like to talk about. We've seen the comments, and I know we're going to talk about some of those subjects that we had seen recently. But again, yeah, check us out: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, right here on Facebook Live. We want to grow. We want to do bigger, better things, and we can't do that without you guys. So
Right.
it would really mean a lot if you guys do give us a share when we do go live, even if you decide not to listen. Someone might have a car ride or something, nothing else better to do than to listen to us babble away. So
That's right.
again, thank you all. Thank you all so much. And I look forward to talking with you, Andy, next week.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye bye.